Today I'll be starting us off in Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, the height which was 60 cubits and its width 60 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent word to assemble the satraps, the prefects and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, and the magistrates, and all the rulers of the province to come in dedication of the image of Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. Then the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and the rulers of the province were assembled for the dedication of the image of Nebuchadnezzar the king set up, and they stood before the image of Nebuchadnezzar, and they heralded loudly, proclaiming, "To you the command is given, O people, nations of the men, in every language, that at this moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, bagpipe, and all the kinds of music. You are to fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. But whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast in the midst of the furnace of the blazing fire." Therefore, at the time when the people heard the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, bagpipe, and all kinds of music, all the people, nations, and the men of every language fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. For the reason at the time, certain Chaldeans came forward and brought charges against the Jews. They responded and said to Nebuchadnezzar the king, "O king, live forever. You, O king, I have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, and bagpipe, and all kinds of music is to fall down and worship the golden image. But whoever does not fall down, the worship shall be cast into the midst of the furnace of the blazing fire. There are certain Jews who have been appointed over the administration of the province of Babylon, named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have disregarded you. They do not serve or worship the golden image which you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and anger, gave orders to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then these men who were brought before the king, Nebuchadnezzar responded and said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now if I were ready at the moment, you are here to sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, and bagpipe, and all kinds of music, to fall down and worship the image I have made. Very well, but if you do not worship, you will immediately be cast in the midst of the furnace, blazing fire, and what God is there who can deliver you out of my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to give you an answer concerning the matter. If it to be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the furnace of the blazing fire, and he will deliver us out of hand, O king. But even if he does not, let us be known, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that he has set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath, and his facial expressions was altered toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He answered, giving orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than he was usually heated. He commanded certain valiant warriors, who to cast them in the furnace of the blazing fire. And these men were tied up by their trousers, their coats, and their caps, and their other clothes, and were cast in the midst of the furnace of the blazing fire. For this reason, because the king commanded was urgent, and the furnace had been extremely hot, the flame that the fire slew the men who carried up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell in the midst of the furnace of the blazing fire, still tied up. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste. He said to the high officials, "Was these not 3 men cast and bound into the midst of the fire?" They replied to the king, "Certainly, O king." He said, "Look, I see 4 men loose and walking around in the midst of the fire without harm, and the appearance of the 4th is like the son of the gods." Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace, blazing fire. He responded and said, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out, you servant of the Most High God, and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out in the midst of the fire. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's high officials gathered around and saw the regard in these men that the fire had no effect on the bodies, and these men nor was the hair or of their heads singed, nor were their trousers damaged, nor their smell of fire even came upon them. Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, "Blessed is the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent an angel to deliver his servants and who put trust in him. violate the king's command, yielded up their bodies so as not to serve or worship any god except their own God. Now, after reading that, I'll go back through go back to the verses and highlight the main points. Verses 4 through 6, the king created a golden image that he wanted his kingdom to worship, or would have been thrown in the furnace. The king was blinded by his own ego, and he believed that his God was more powerful than any other god, and that his image was better than God's image, which God created everything, including the king, so Nebuchadnezzar, so that was very foolish of him. Verse number 12, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow down. And this shows that you should always do the right thing. And even if no one, everyone around them were bowing down, everyone was making it, praising the king, the king's image, and they were the only three not to do it. And even if it was just one person, you should still do the right thing, and even if you're the only one there. Verses 13 through 16, the king confronts them and warns them about the consequences for not bowing down and worshiping the image of gold that he had made. And he's trying to pressure them into bowing down and saying that, oh, I'm gonna throw you in the furnace if you don't bow down. And he's trying to scare them into bowing down. But you should not let that happen. You should never let someone pressure you into doing the contrary to God's will. God's will and promise is better than anything that men can offer. God's promise is that if we do what he follows, he tells us to do, we will go to heaven. And no man can promise us anything better than heaven. Verses 19 through 23, they refuse to bow down and are thrown into the furnace. Sometimes we must be willing to accept that the world may do to us if we stand up and do what is right, whatever is a furnace or ridicule. In school, there's a lot of people who choose to do the wrong thing, and they try to get you to do it with them. And if you decide not to, they will make fun of you. They'll they'll gang up on you and try to. Their main goal is to convince you to go with them, and because they don't like to be told that what they're doing is wrong. And you have to be strong enough to do the right thing, even though it's hard. Verses 25 to 28, God sends an angel to protect them, and Nebuchadnezzar realizes God's power. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 4 through 16, it reads, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand and gives it light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they might be seeing the good deeds of the glorify of your Father in heaven." Basically, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they believed in God and were thrown in the furnace. And they were in the light of the world, and they lit up Babylon, and everyone could see that their God was the most powerful God. And he is the only God. The points to take away. The first point is the power of a godly friendship. In Daniel 1, chapter 1, 6 through 14, it says, "Now among them the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hanani, and Mishael, of Azariah. Then the commander of the officials assigned them new names to them. Daniel he assigned the name of Belteshazzar, to Hanani, Shadrach, to Mishael, Meshach, and Azariah, Abednego. But Daniel made up his mind that he would not defile himself by the king's choice of food and the wine that he drank. So he sought permission from the commanders of the official that he might not defile himself. Now God granted Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the commander and the officials. And the commander of the officials said to Daniel, I'm afraid of my lord and the king, who has appointed your food and your drink. For why should he see your faces looking more haggard than the youths who are your own age? Then you would make me forfeit my head to the king. But Daniel said to the overseer, whom the commander of the officials who had appointed over Daniel, Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days, and let us be given some vegetables and eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be observed in your presence, in the presence of the youths who are eating the king's choice food, and deal with your servants according to what you see. So he listened to them and tested them for 10 days. Daniel, Shadrach, and Meshach, and Abednego decided to stick together and serve God. These were the only four group out of all of them, and After the 10 days, they were the most fit out of all of them, and their presence was better than everyone else's. And they were a group of friends that stick together through a hard time. In Proverbs 18:24, a man of too many friends comes to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. You should always choose friends that can stick close to you like a brother. Like, they won't just be with you for the easy times, like Job's friends. And whenever hard times come, Job's friends always he's like, you should curse God. He's doing all this stuff to you. Why praise a God who does this to you? But those are the friends you don't want to have. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, "Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals." But I think the opposite of that is good company creates good morals. You should surround yourself around people that improves your character. And you should also be the person that people look up to and want to be around. Because as I said before, you are the light to other people. And if they want to be around you, their character is going to start building up in the right way. Galatians 6:2 says, "Bear one another's burdens and thereby fulfill the law of the Christ." You should not be around a friend and then whenever a rough time comes, you leave. You should bear their hard times with them, and you should be close to them. And don't just look at it as like, oh, God's gonna see this and then he's gonna let me go to heaven. It's like bonus points. You should just do it because that's what God wants you to do. My second point was we must be willing to stand up for what is right. A good point of this is when people at my school are like, "Oh, churches is too boring. I'd rather go to a church that has more like fun stuff, like music, concert, fog machines, and like all that." And we should be able to realize that we're not at church to have fun. We're here to learn about God, and should be the most important thing to us. We shouldn't care about our own will when we can learn about God's. Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 through 20. "Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate that is wide and that is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who find it." And then 15, "Beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inward and ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from their thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles. Are they? So every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit, nor a bad tree produce good fruit. Every tree that does not bear fruit is cut down and thrown in the fire. So then you will know them by their fruits." Verse 15 is warning us about false prophets. It's hard to say that someone's point of view is wrong. It's hard to if someone's telling you stuff that's not true. It's hard to say oh, that's not exactly right. Like, they're gonna take offense to that, and then they're gonna make fun of you, and they're gonna find other people who believe that, and they're all just gonna gang up on you. Verse 17 to 19, "We're known for our fruits. God will judge us by our actions and how we serve Him, not on how others think of us." At the end of as I said, you should go down the narrow road, even though that not many people travel on that road. You should always try to go down that road by yourself, just like Radchak, Meshach, and Abednego. They were the only three who chose the right path, while everyone else went down the broad path. And I bet it was hard for them because they were thrown into a furnace for that. John 14, chapter 14, 10 through 15. "Do not believe that I am the Father and the Father is me. The words that I say to you, I do not speak on my own initiative, but the Father is abiding in me who does His work. Believe me that I am the Father and the Father is me. Otherwise, believe that because of the work themselves. Truly, truly I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also. The greater work than these he will do, because I go back to the Father. Whatever you ask in my name, that will I do, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask me anything in the name, I will do it. If you love me, you will keep my commandments." Christ tells us what to do. He says it right there. If you love me, and you will do my commandments. It is clear that we are to serve according to Christ's will and not our will. even if it's hard to do so. You should always try to do what God wants us to do. And my third point is to always trust God. Last week I talked about David and Goliath, and David trusted that God would be with him. And 1 Samuel 17, verse 37, David said, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw from the bear, he will also deliver me from the hand of the Philistine." He trusted that God would deliver him from the hand of the Philistine, just like he does for a bear whenever he's tending to a sheep. And we should always have that kind of mindset. We're not afraid to fight the challenges of the world, because God will always be with us. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego trusted that God would be with them when they're thrown in the furnace. Like they were willing to accept being thrown into a furnace that's 7 times hotter than it normally was. And like the people right next to the furnace, like they were gone. It was just so hot. And they were willing to just jump in there because they believed that God would be with them. And my last verse is Psalm 28:7. "The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him." We should be able to go in the world knowing that God is with us. He's our strength and our shield, which are the two main weapons in combat. We can go in the world knowing that God will be with us, and He will be with. We have His word to be able to fight any temptation that Satan can give us, or people making fun of us. We know that God is with us, and His will is the most important will, and we shouldn't care about any other person's opinions about us.